When we talked about monopoly pricing, we assumed that the monopolist has to charge all of its customers the exact same price. But this, of course, isn't true. Firms can often get away with charging different customers separate prices. When a firm does this, it engages in what's called price discrimination. Price discrimination can be very profitable for firms. Let's go back to a slide that we saw in the monopoly pricing video. In this example, the monopolist can make the good for free. It knows Bill's willing to pay up to $100 and Tom up to $12. Well, if the monopolist has to charge everyone the same price, it'll just sell the good to Bill for $100. This is socially wasteful because Tom values something at $12 that can be made for free. So not selling the good to Tom creates a deadweight loss. But now imagine that the monopolist can price discriminate. In fact, let's say the monopolist can perfectly price discriminate and it can charge anyone any price it wants. Well, now the monopolist will charge Bill $100 and Tom $12. The monopolist is willing to sell to Tom because by selling to Tom, the monopolist isn't forced to lower the price that it charges Bill. But price discrimination isn't always this easy. A monopolist or any firm faces several barriers to price discrimination. A firm that wants to price discriminate faces three fundamental challenges. First, it has to determine what customers are willing to pay. I mean, imagine a business has a strategy of saying, okay, tell us the most you'll pay for a good and we'll charge you that amount. Customers are going to figure it out. That strategy will fail. Second challenge a price discriminating firm faces is to figure out how to actually sell to different people at different prices. You've determined that Bill is willing to pay a lot more than Tom. Well, what's the mechanism you go about charging Bill more than Tom? And the final challenge is to prevent resale. In the previous example, if the monopolist said, okay, Bill, you'll have to pay $100, Tom will pay $12, what Tom will do is he'll go in and say, sure, here's my $12, buy the good, and then quickly sell to Bill for a lot more than $12, and the monopolist will be worse off than if it just sold to Bill. We're now going to go through and see how firms in different select industries manage to overcome these three challenges and profit through price discrimination. Colleges are the absolute masters of price discrimination, and they even manage to put a positive spin on it, claiming they do it to help needy students. Let's go through the three things that a firm needs to do to price discriminate and see how colleges have overcome all three challenges. First, to price discriminate, you need to determine what customers are willing to pay. Well, what do colleges do if you apply for financial aid? They require you to submit your parents' tax returns and any financial data on yourself that you happen to have. And you have to submit your transcript, so the colleges have a pretty good idea of what other schools you might get into. So this is really great for colleges to figure out the maximum amount of money they can extract from a student. And you can bet there are people at, in financial aid offices who are running computer programs based on how much money you've in the bank account, your parents, based upon your grade point average, SAT score, where you live, to figure out what's the most we can charge the student and still have the student accept our offer. Then colleges have to figure out, how to sell to different people at separate prices. Well, this is easy. Colleges do that all the time. You get your own personal price when you get admitted to a college, and they have to prevent resale. Well, they've done that as well. If you get an offer to a college, you can't sell it to another student. The offer is just for you. You have your own special price to a college. Now, colleges, of course, would claim that, they give financial aid to needy students because they want to make sure everyone can afford college. But, every organization, when they do something for their selfish interests, spins it as if they're doing it for the greater good of the world. With price discrimination, with financial aid, colleges are trying to figure out the most money they can extract from you. Now, that it's true, what'll happen is students from poorer backgrounds will end up having to pay less for college because the college will figure it can extract less from poorer students. But don't think the college is necessarily doing this in order to, promote egalitarian ideals. The college is doing this because they're trying to get as much money as they can. Similarly, with a college giving a nice financial aid package to a student with really great grades. Well, a student who has really good grades, that student has a lot of options, and so that student has to be given a better financial aid package in order for the college to have a chance of getting that student to go there. So again, a lot of what colleges do in terms of financial aid is really just a very successful form of price discrimination. And they do things that other firms would love. I'm sure car dealers would love it if they could get away with requiring you to give them your tax returns before you bought a car, and if they could prevent you from ever reselling a car you bought from them. But colleges have, privileged legal positions, and they have a lot of respect, so they can get away with doing things that most firms can't. Airlines also engage in massive amounts of price discrimination. When you're flying on an airline, the person seated next to you, they might be paying 3 times what you did, or maybe only a third. One way that airlines price discriminate is by trying to charge business travelers a lot more. You might have the exact same customer, and if the airline might say, okay, if we thought this person was traveling on business, we'd want the flight to be $2,000, but if we thought they were traveling for pleasure, we'd want the price to be $1,000. This is because people traveling on business often aren't very price sensitive because their company is paying, while if they're traveling for themselves, they're going on vacation, they're paying themselves, and they will be price sensitive. So the airline might think, gee, the most we could get away with charging this customer if they were traveling on business is $2,000, but the most we could get away with charging this customer if they're traveling for pleasure is $1,000. If we charge more than that, then they would pick a less convenient but cheaper flight. So now, how do airlines know if you're traveling for business or for pleasure? One big clue is whether you're staying over a weekend. Business travelers want to be home with their families over the weekend. So they might, leave on a Monday, come back on a Thursday. But people traveling for pleasure often very much do want to be away for a weekend. So it can be much cheaper if you fly and if you stay over on a weekend. Another thing airlines will do to price discriminate is when you log onto the computer to get your ticket, they might notice where you're logging on from. I mean, let's imagine you're midway between 2 airports and both airports have flights going to the city you want to go to. Well, the airline will figure you're probably very price sensitive. In contrast, if you're really close to one airport but very far from another, the airline might say, well, you probably need to fly with us out of this airport so we can get away with charging you a lot. But I think the main way airlines price discriminate is by charging rich people a lot of money to fly first class. So, the airline, if you fly first class, service is much nicer, a lot more convenience. The plane will actually wait for you if you're a bit late. And the airlines will say, okay, rich people are willing to pay a lot for convenience, so we'll give them the extra convenience, we'll treat them really nicely, and we can charge them a lot more. Now, the airlines have to be worried, though, that, a rich person might say, oh, I'm willing to suffer the inconvenience of a few-hour flight to travel economy class. So this is actually a perverse reason why the airlines benefit by making the travel experience of people who bought the cheap seats unpleasant. Right? Normally, if you make something about your service unpleasant, you lose money. But airlines could actually increase their profits by making people who fly economy class, making their lives a bit more hectic, making their travel a bit more difficult, because that'll prevent some rich people from pretending to be poor or middle class. So the next time you're flying economy class and you're wondering, why is the airline doing this? It just seems so annoying. They might really want to annoy you just in case you're secretly rich and trying to get away with not paying a rich person's price for flying. There's a lot of price discrimination in the movie industry. If you see a movie when it first comes out, you might have to pay quite a bit for it. But if you wait longer, it might go into a second-run theater. You can pay a bit less. Or eventually, you can see it on television on maybe a premium channel that you paid extra for. Or finally, you could see it on free television and you pay for the movie by watching a few commercials. Maybe the movie only got, a few cents from you watching the movie. What the movie company is doing is price discrimination through impatience. If you really want to see a movie, you're probably willing to pay more for it. So the movie companies can say, okay, we'll first charge a lot for the movie, and then we'll gradually make it easier and easier for people to see. So the people who really like this movie will get them paying the most. Another way that movies price discriminate is by the times in which you go see a movie. It's usually more expensive if you pay to see a movie, say Saturday at 8 o'clock, than it is Wednesday at 4 o'clock. The movie theater is probably figuring that, well, if you're seeing a movie at Wednesday at 4 o'clock, you might not have as much money, you might have a lot of free time, While if you're seeing a movie, at Saturday at 8 o'clock, you're probably a richer person. This might be one of the only times you have free, and so we can get away with charging you more. In the United States, the Friday after Thanksgiving is called Black Friday, and a lot of stores give very deep discounts. And people know this, and a lot of people go to the stores to buy stuff that's much cheaper than they otherwise would. And in fact, there's sort of a spectacle about what happens that, so many people will go to the store and try to get this extra special deal, that there's occasionally fights, people get knocked down. So this can be like a fun experience, or it can be a really annoying experience. Why do stores do this? Why have stores pick this one day to give serious discounts? I would say the answer is, you probably know what I'm going to say, it's price discrimination. People who are really price sensitive, they're going to be the ones who are going to go to the stores on Black Friday to look for the deals. People who aren't price sensitive, who aren't worried about getting very good deals, are going to say, well, I don't want to go to the store on Black Friday because it's going to be really crowded. I might get pushed. It'll be really noisy. See, what a store really wants to do is separate out the price sensitive and the price insensitive customers. It wants to say, price sensitive customers, we know that you'll be going to all these stores and being very careful, so we want to give you a low price. Price insensitive customers, well, you're going to decide whether or not to go to the store. You'll give some thought to price, but not that much, so we want to charge you more. So Black Friday deals, they're a way that stores can get just the price-sensitive customers into the door for one day a year. So in fact, this is a reason why stores might like it if there are occasional fights on Black Friday. They want Black Friday to be an unpleasant experience for people who aren't really into deep discounts, because this keeps them away, and those people will buy the good on other days when the prices are more expensive. Coupons are the final type of price discrimination I want to talk about in this video. Coupons seem really strange. You bring in this piece of paper to the checkout stand of a supermarket, and in return for holding up the line, taking a bit more time, you get a discount on a product. You ever seen that doing anything that's fundamentally helping the store? Why do so many stores do this? Well, it's price discrimination. Again, as I said with the last video, a store like Stop and Shop it really wants to separate price sensitive and price insensitive customers. Where I live, there's Stop and Shop and there's Big Y, and they compete. And let's say there's some people who just go to whatever store's closest, and there's other people who know what's being sold in which store at what price, and they'll say, well, I'll buy these goods at Stop and Shop because they're cheaper, but I'll buy these other goods in Big Y. What say Stop and Shop would like to do is say, well, the customers who are the price sensitive ones who are going to go to both our store and Big Y, we want to charge them less. But the price insensitive customers will just go to our store, well, we want to charge them more. But how does Stop and Shop do this? It wouldn't really work to say, okay, tell us if you're price sensitive or price insensitive, and then we'll base what we charge you on your answer. People will figure that game out. So what stores will do is say, okay, if you're price sensitive, you've got to prove it, and prove it by wasting your time by bringing in these little pieces of paper, and by wasting a bit more of your time by standing in the checkout line and giving us these pieces of paper. So if you're price sensitive, that means you're willing to spend a lot of time looking for slightly lower prices. Well, a person who is price sensitive will be willing to use coupons. A person who isn't price sensitive, who's not going to bother figuring out whether Big Y or Stop and Shop is charging the lower prices, they won't be willing to use coupons. So coupons are a great means of identifying who's willing to pay a lower price and then giving those people a lower price. The final price discrimination lesson I want to give you is that when firms are price discriminating, you have the opportunity to negotiate. Let's imagine there's a good that you want and it costs $1 to make, but a firm is charging you $10 for it because it thinks you'll pay the $10. Well, the firm would be better off selling it to you for $3 than not selling it to you at all. So if you've identified situations in which you think you're being price discriminated against, you think you're not getting as good a price as someone else, try and maybe come up with a way of getting a better price. Think of what's going on from the point of view of the firm. Say, is this firm charging different people separate prices? If so, am I getting a high price or a low price? How are they identifying me? Maybe you're buying a car. Okay, what is the person selling me the car? They're probably price discriminating. They're probably looking to see how much I'm willing to pay. How can I signal to them that I'm really cheap, that I'm really willing to look in lots of car dealerships to get a lower price? Or if you're at a hotel, I mean, hotels engage in lots of price discrimination with the honors bar and with prices for rooms and all that. You might be able to negotiate. Maybe you're at a hotel, and they offer you a certain rate. Maybe they'll give you a lower rate. Now, it's hard to negotiate with people in checkout lines of supermarkets. The transaction costs are too much. But in a lot of other instances, you can negotiate. Now, it only works. You can only negotiate if you're willing to pay more than the marginal cost of the good. Because if you're not willing to pay more than the marginal cost of the good, the firm is better off not dealing with you. But if you're pretty confident that, I'm willing to pay X amount for this good, and X is way above the marginal cost of the good, then the firm would rather have you as a customer than not. So if they're charging you a lot more than X, maybe, you can talk to them and try to get a lower price. You've got to convince the firm, though, that you'd be willing to walk away if you can't get a good price. Oh, and by the way, students, this applies to you when applying to colleges or to graduate schools. Remember, you apply to law school. The law school, if it gives you some financial aid, well, it's going to, the amount of financial aid they're offering you is based upon how much they want you, but also how much they think you might go to another law school. So it might be worth saying, I'd love to go to your school, but gee, I got into this other law school, and could you match their financial aid offer? You could save quite a bit of money. So remember, you can negotiate with firms who are engaging in price discrimination. They're trying to get you to pay as much as they think they can get from you. So you should also be playing games and try to pay as little as you can get away with.